Whovians, and welcome to the third channel. I'm your freezing host, Tom Mason. No, it is not cold in my room, and no, the Wi-Fi does work, but the computer wants to freezing like Wim Hof because he loves a good ice-cold bath. Today, I'm with a very famous Irish comedian who is very good friends with multiple comedians of the generation. You'll know him, you'll love him. It's Jimmy Cricket.
Hi, Tom. Come closer. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. So let's start at the very beginning, because Julie Andrews once said it was a very good place to start. How did you get to a wonderful world called comedy?
Yes. I've got a story, a little joke to start us off about Julie Andrews, if I may. And it's about the time that Mary Poppins was in a hotel restaurant having her breakfast. And it was cottage cheese and scrambled eggs. And the waiter said, "Did you like your breakfast, Mary?" And she said, "Super, cottage eggs, fantastic. Eggs, they were atrocious." So we started the interview with a joke.
But how did you get into comedy?
Well, I got basically into comedy in where I grew up in Belfast, and I had friends. I've always liked comedians, and I used to hear them on the radio, and then I used to watch them on the television. Ken Dodd, Harry Worth, all the great British comedians, Morecambe and Wise, Tommy Cooper. And I sort of grew up with them. And then I got a job as a redcoat in Butlins holiday camp in Mosney in the south of Ireland. Belfast is the north of Ireland. So I went there, and redcoat jobs obviously are very good. You get to know all the holiday makers through the week. And then they have a redcoat show on the Thursday. So I used to go out and try my jokes out on them. Always very corny jokes, but because they knew you, the people who were on holiday, the campers, they were a very captive audience. They knew you as Uncle Jimmy, and that sort of got me started.
So, what made you want to write your autobiography now?
Well, Mrs. Cricket, my good lady, kept asking me to do it, and I didn't. I've always, Tom, my philosophy has always been yesterday's history, tomorrow's a mystery, and today's a gift. So I wanted to always live in the present, and I suppose at 77, you've got quite a lot to tell, and the changing landscape of the entertainment profession, it'll give younger people a peep at what it looked like, and then older people, more mature people, if that's a better word, will reminisce with you. It'll strike a chord with you. So I just felt that the ducks were in place to do it, Tom,
And do you think you've learned more from writing it now because of your age? Do you reckon you've been able to tell young comedians this is how it used to be done?
Yes, absolutely. And I would never have been able to really formulate it before, because as I've said at the start of the book, I was inspired because right about 2012, when I was doing pantomime in Preston, the features editor of the Lancashire Evening Post, a lady called Asma Day, she said, "Would you like to do a column for us, like a showbiz column?" And I hadn't really written anything before, and she encouraged my first faltering steps. And my first column was about the actual panto itself. It was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and it was on at the Charter Theatre in Preston. And then my next column was, there was a famous crooner, American crooner in the 30s, 40s, and called Bing Crosby. And he actually appeared in Preston with his family towards the end of his career. And there was a story that I'd heard from the gentleman who was in the pantomime with me. He was called Peter. He played musical instruments, And he actually told me the story that Bing Crosby missed his car, so had to get the train up to Preston. And I thought this was a great story, so I wrote about that story. And the actual Lancashire Evening Post had the photograph of him getting off the train. And then from then on, I started to get better at. I used to write different. The only thing the actual Asthma asked me to do, most of the stuff where I was able to do it, make my own stories, people I'd met in show business, anecdotes. But she actually asked me. She said, "Did you know Jim Bowen, the Lancashire comedian who you probably will have heard of from the Bullseye, the game show?" And I'd done the game show with him, and I knew Jim quite well. She said, "Would you do?" He had just passed away then, so I did a tribute to him, and that was the only thing she ever asked. Otherwise, and that was, as I say, 8 or 9 years ago. Now, Asma's left. I think she's joined the Huffington Post or something, and there's been 3 different editors since that, and I'm still writing those articles, and I think they help me articulate my thoughts and help me to get a handle on the book, to be honest with you, Tom.
And with you being like, I'm going to say the word, like really mega famous, how do you handle fame?
Well, I took it like a duck to water, really, because I was ready for it. As I say, if I go back to the holiday camp days, I did them from 66 till 69. That was Butlins each summer. And then I went in 1970 to Pontins. I did 2 summers there. Then when I met my wife, May, we will have been married 50 years next year. I then did all the clubs, all around Lancashire, all the working men's clubs and the cabaret clubs in Manchester. So so you could say 8 years professional, run the clubs, and 5 years in the holiday camps. So I was sort of right. I think fame is fine when you're ready for it. So I was 35 by the time I got on the talent show, Search for a Star. It came out in the early 80s. So I think if you're catapulted into fame too quick, then it could easily go to your head, But I think that's what kept me grounded. See, comedy obviously is can be very challenging in the early days. So there's a lot of times when you walk off to the sound of your own feet. So that you don't take any success for granted when you do start to get your character. But Bobby Ball told me, when you start getting experience, Jimmy, you'll be dying less and less, and the success will start to come. And that was very wise advice for me, from Bobby.
And being successful, did that help your career to get the jobs you wanted to have?
Yes, you can be more selective then after a while, can't you? And then you find out the things that you're good at, and the venues that suit you. You see, I'm a clean comedian, quite a gentle, clean comedian. So pantomimes and things, theaters are very good for me. A sportsman dinner wouldn't be very good for me, because, especially if it's all male, because they prefer more a racy comedian or after dinner speaker. So I know that that's not my scene, but there's other comedians can do that well. So you find your water level.
And because you've done so much work on both TV and radio, which one do you prefer working in? Do you prefer working in the visual medium, or do you prefer working in the listener's ears?
Well, there's good, because I'm a physical comedian. I am visual. Then television suits me that way. But because of my Northern Ireland accent, I suppose that can go well verbally. And I think the radio is an underrated medium, because somebody once said to me, Jimmy, radio's the medium of the mind, and television's the medium of the mindless. But that maybe a bit crudely, but I get what he meant. You can go on journeys on the radio, can't you? You can listen, and your imagination is brought into a fantasy world. So it's a very lovely medium as well. I've been blessed that I've had 4 series on television and 5 on the radio, BBC Radio 2. So I've had both mediums. So I'm a very lucky guy.
And as a child, was there anything that inspired you to join show business?
Yes, going to the local theatres in Belfast. There was 2 theatres, the Grand Opera House and the Empire. And in the 50s, when I was growing up, because I'm 77 now, I was born in 1945, the actual, during the 50s, they had what's known as twice nightly variety. So you would have, let's say, a pop star like Lonnie Donegan or Max Bygraves or David Whitfield, and they would do half an hour, but the rest of the show would be comprised of jugglers, acrobats, tap dancers, and they would all be backed by a full-blown orchestra. So when I went to see it when I was a kid, these shows with my father and my elder brother John, I was just mesmerized, Tom, and that never left me. I've always loved variety. I'm actually reading a book now by a gentleman called Roy Hood, and it traces a variety from 1945 to 1960. Every act that was in variety, and it's an amazing book, you know.
And you said how you love variety. Is that why you love doing the kids variety performance?
Yes, I did, and I met some wonderful people on those shows. They were fabulous. I'll tell you a story about one of them, can I?
Yeah.
They were normally recorded in the spring and shown round about this time. Princess Margaret used to sit in the circle. She never really sat where Her Majesty, the late Queen, sat, or the other royal family up in the box. She preferred to blend in, so she would sit rightly. So you could see why she did it, because in those royal shows, a lot of the audience look up at the box to see is the Queen enjoying it, don't they? And that'll be the King when he does it. But she preferred to do that. Now, in this particular one, it was shown on late November. It was the only one that was shown ready to go out on Christmas Day. And the show opened with an acrobatic act called Johnny Hutch and the Halfwits. They did 7 minutes, and then I went on to do 3 minutes. And then after me, there was meant to be a Cinderella scene with Paul Nicholas and a lady called John Francis. And they had a well-known situation comedy at the time called Just Good Friends, right? And they were, what was going to happen when I'd finished, the curtain would open and they would do this scene, the kitchen scene from Cinderella. Now, I finished my 3 minutes and I walked off to the side of the stage, and the stage manager was he was all of a doodah. He said, we're not ready to do the Cinderella scene. So I just thought a couple of seconds and I walked straight back on again. There was a pause in the audience with Princess Margaret there and everybody looking up. And then I did another few minutes. I did a letter from my mommy, which I'm sort of known for. And then I glanced over at the wings and he gave me the thumbs up. And then I walked off. So it meant that the show kept moving, you see, Tom. They didn't have to have a break. And a few weeks later, I got a letter from the producer called Dougie Squires, and he said, thank you for keeping the show moving. And to bring it right up to date, that producer, Dougie Squires, who was a choreographer as well, he just passed away just last week at the age of 91. But I cherished that letter that he wrote to me, and it was one of those moments you just wanted to be there and keep the show going, you know?
Yeah. And when you like come to write these jokes, how do you go about writing the jokes?
Well, sometimes you think backwards. Now, every Monday morning I try and do a Twitter joke. Right. So a few of the ones I've done, I'll say, right. The other day, a fly landed on my wrist and went to sleep. I thought, not on my watch. Now, that took me a while before I wrote it there because I was looking for how to get the words in the right. I had the gist of it. Now, there's another one I did called Last Week I Changed Light Bulbs in my living room and I took a selfie. Do you know I saw myself in a different light? Right? So that's another one. And then I think something will happen. For instance, I said, I've just bought a new pair of shoes. And the first time I put them on, they had an argument with one another. I think they just got off on the wrong foot. So I like to do silly ones like that. I'm trying to think what was the one last Monday I did one, and it was, I did a show, and a show for an audience of ex-football referees. But I felt very uncomfortable because you have to be careful what you say in a room full of whistleblowers. So that was the latest one I did. And I think that the one that's coming up that I'm going to do, if it can come to me, yes. What did the sock say when it found out it had a hole in it? Well, I'll be darned. So that's the next one that'll be coming up next Monday. Yeah, I enjoy making up little jokes, Tom. It's good fun. And the thing about it, the difference about it is in my act, I do character comedy. Now, I'll get my hat just to show you, and I sort of do routines. So what I'll do is, ladies and gentlemen, come here. I went to see the doctor once. I said, Doctor once, I think my eyesight's failing. He said, it's gone completely. This is the laundrette. And then I'll carry on and I'll say, oh, and there's more. Doctor, I've got a right toe on my left foot and a left toe on my right foot. He said, you've got myxomatosis. So that would be a routine. And then I would do one about a train. I'd say, I rang up the railway station. I said, what time does the next train go to London? He said, look it up online. I mean, how dangerous is that? You're walking up and down the line, the trains are whizzing past. So I went to the ticket office. I said, a return, please. He said, where to? I said, back here. I said, I want to go to London. He said, change at Stockport. I said, I want my change here. But I got my own back. I bought a return ticket and I never went back. So that's the way the routines sort of go when I play the character, you know?
And when, like, because there's a lot of comedians now, what advice would you give to an up-and-coming comedian, the ones who write, like, in a similar style to you?
Well, I would tell them the advice I got from a comedian called Frank Carson. He was from Northern Ireland like me, and he became famous when I was a teenager. So when I came over from Ireland, I went to Liverpool because I knew he had an agent there, and an agent called Ernie Mac. And I wanted to break into show business. And Ernie said, look, I'll get Frank Carson on the phone and he'll give you some advice. So he got Frank, he handed me the phone, and Frank had this great Northern Ireland accent. He said, I believe you want to break into comedy. And I said, yes. He said, well, try and work every night, even if it's for nothing, because that way, when you come off, you'll decide, should I put a word in here or a word in out? But every night you'll be getting confidence and experience. And I remember the telephone call finished. I said, thank you for your advice, Frank. He said, it's not advice you want, it's money. Yeah, I would say to them, try and work every night, just like Frank told me. But there's not the venues around. You see, nowadays, Tom, it's more the comedy club. My daughter, Katie, plays comedy clubs. So you would do open mic things, wouldn't you? I think that's the thing they do. So write out, see what you want, what feels good to you, what style you do. Do you want to do physical comedy or patter? And just get your first 5, 10, 15 minutes on those open nights and just build it up from them. I would get Michael McIntyre's book. That's a very good book for a modern comedian. I enjoyed that, how he went on the Comedy Store, didn't they? Doing 10 minutes, and then they give you another. If you do well, you come back and do 20 minutes. I think Michael's very, very good, and he's very physical, isn't he?
And not only have you been on TV, right, you've also done one of the programs that is most memorable for the person that's actually on it, not knowing what's going on. So, how was your experience on This Is Your Life?
Right. Well, what made my This Is Your Life different was because when I met my wife, and her 2 sisters in Pontins holiday camp, one of her sisters, Margaret, could sing with my wife. They could do harmony. So when we moved to Manchester, we moved to Stockport first, and the girls got work in the clubs singing. And they had a 3rd sister called Evelyn, and she was the one who could drive. We couldn't afford decent cars, so we used to drive bangers. And Evelyn drove us around. Then she left and went to Australia. And then I came up to London. I had an agent in London at the time called Phyllis Rounds, and she invited me up to go and see a show in the West End. And then she said, tomorrow morning, we'll meet up and we'll go to a building site and where we will have a publicity photograph for the book you've just read. What I'd done then, I'd written a book of letters from my mammy. They're the comedy letters. They usually go like, dear son, you won't recognize the house when you come home. We've moved. So they're all different things like that. So I'd been asked by a publisher to put all the letters in a book. So she invited me up that night. And as I came up on the train from Manchester and came out of the Oxford Circus tube station, who should I see but my wife's sister, Evelyn, who emigrated to Australia 15 years ago. She'd flown over for the show, but you're really meant to stay in the hotel. But she just took a walk, and it's 1,000,000 to 1 chance that I seen her. But she said, shh, don't tell May that I'm coming up to Rochdale, because by that time we'd moved to Rochdale. So that's what made the show that wee bit different. And they were going to cancel it, Tom, because they liked the drop. They liked that beginning, that surprise. But what happened the next morning then, as I was driving to the building site to promote my book, the guy, the taxi driver, he turned in to the building site, and there was the host of the show, Eamon Andrews, in a tin hat with Evelyn. And he had this great Irish accent. He was from the Southern Ireland, Dublin. And he'd say, Jimmy, last night you saw your sister-in-law in Oxford Street. But you're wondering what it was, but some morning here today. And he handed me this red book. He said, this is your life. And then they whisked me away to the studio. They still got the surprise because my wife had been under the illusion that Evelyn couldn't come over because when she was asked, she hadn't been too well. So the research team told her she wouldn't be coming over. So what we do, they said to me, and I was genuinely surprised when Eamon gave me the book. She says to me, the floor manager said, when we get to the point to talk about the Tweedy sisters near the end of the program, Eamon will ask you about the other sister, Evelyn, because Margaret had already come on to sit with her sister. So when I get to that, and I say there was this was Eamon talking to me, he says, when I get to Evelyn, I'll mention it. You just interrupt. This is what the floor manager said. You say, Eamon, yes, but May thinks she's not here because she's not well, but she's come all the way over from Australia. And then, of course, May and her sister Margaret were all in tears as Evelyn came through the door. So it was a lovely moment.
Yeah, and if do you reckon that the This Is Your Life format would still work today?
Well, I'm not so sure, Tom, and I'll tell you why. Because when Eamon Andrews passed away, another wonderful TV presenter called Michael Aspel did it. And I met Michael last November down in Brighton. It was a famous comedian from the 40s and 50s called Max Miller. It was his appreciation society, and Michael was there. And Michael, he didn't tell me that day, but I've already read, with social media now, things get out very quick. From television, whatever's on, people put postings, and they may have given the game away by posting a recording and it hadn't come out yet, so it spoils the surprise. So that may not happen. You may not be able to do that now because of that. But who knows? You can never tell until you have a go at it. If a TV company could prove us both wrong.
Well, I did hear rumours once, and I've never heard him since, Jonathan Ross was going to do his own version of This Is Your Life. Would you want to see that? Would that something interest you?
Well, it's all, I think the public would like it. I think the public love, because the local BBC Northwest have had a lovely feature the last couple of days. They've had a boy who's on hospital radio up in Cumbria, and he wanted to meet his idol, Michael Ball, down on Radio 2. So the cameras come down there, and there's this great surprise when he met Michael Ball. So yeah, I think people do love those. Yeah, I think it would still work. Yeah,
because you've been on the show, you'll know a lot about it. But how heavy is the book? Because whenever you watch it, I always think the book's weighs 4 tons.
Yeah, it is quite heavy because you've got all the photos and things. Yeah, it is. But it's quite a magical moment to be asked to be on it. Tom. It's quite amazing. Eamon Andrews in particular, he had this innate goodness about him. This that people sort of loved. He had a likable personality, and it was just. I think he was the ideal man to host it.
And throughout your career, you've worked with so many interesting people. And what were they like working with the Crankies?
Yeah, well, the Crankies were lovely. I mean, I did their TV show, but I also did a pantomime with them up in the Pavilion Theatre in Glasgow, and it was it wasn't the normal conventional pantomime. It was Pinocchio, and little Jeanette, who plays the cheeky schoolboy, she actually played Pinocchio, and her husband Ian, he played Giuseppe, the toy maker, and I played Jiminy Cricket. I played, because people sometimes mistake my name, but I actually played Jiminy Cricket, and I did the song from the Walt Disney film, Give a Little Whistle, Give a Little Whistle. The one thing I remember about it, well, there's a few things I remember. Jeanette, the Cranky, had a special built-in nose, and it was plugged to a wire in her pocket. And when she told a lie, that when Pinocchio tells a lie, his nose gets bigger, she would press this, and the nose would come out. This false nose. You know something, Tom? They were loved up at Glasgow. And they used to, after we'd done the story, put the story to bed. In a pantomime, you do what's known as the song sheet. A popular song comes down, and all the audience sing it, and whoever's in panto splits the audience, let's each half sing and see who's the best. But before they did that, they did the song. They did their schoolboy act like a ventriloquist. You've probably seen it with Ian and Jeanette. And it used to get howls. I used to stand in the wings and I used to roar with laughter. It was quite amazing, you know. They were loved by their own people.
And you mentioned a lot during this interview about pantomime. Why do you love pantomime so much?
Well, because it's the whole family there. And it never goes out of fashion because the story is enchanting. You know, the Cinderella one's enchanting. Jack and the Beanstalk is a bit adventurous. Snow White's charming. But they've got the stories already there. It's good versus evil with a fairy godmother. And you have the villain. So people can get involved booing the villain and cheering on the fairy godmother. But you can always slot in contemporary songs. So it never goes out of fashion. The story is the tradition. It's always be there. But modern songs can be put in at the right moments. So it's always up to date.
And going forward too, as we say, up to date, would you ever consider doing Taskmaster if you ever got asked?
What's that, Tom? Sorry.
Would you ever, if you got asked, would you ever consider doing Taskmaster?
You've got me there now. Is that a program? You mean?
Yeah, it's a panel show where a bunch of comedians get set really ridiculous tasks and they have to complete them, and they get judged by Greg Davis.
Oh, I didn't even. It's a new one on me. It's a new one on me. Well, I'm not sure. I'd have to watch it first. I'm not a lover of reality programs, to be honest with you. So that's why you would never see me on a reality. It's not my scene. I love to do my stand-up. I'm a performer per se. And that when that went out of fashion, I sort of bowed out gracefully. That's one of the reasons I did the DVD. I did it by own DVD at the Theatre Royal in Bacup because I wanted to get my act on DVD so I could get it out to the public. No, I would be more for it. This is nice. I like doing the chat show, or I did the Pointless Celebrity. That I quite enjoyed that, really. But I concentrate more on my live work at the moment. That's my real. I've always got a buzz, and that's why I came into the industry to do live shows. And thank God I'm still quite busy because I have a residency in Blackpool in a hotel called the Lindeen. And starting in July, I will do the first Wednesday of every month right through to the end of the year. And then in between, I'll be doing other shows. I do lots of charity because I like to charity shows because you're giving back something. It's like my book now, which is on sale on Amazon. £1 of every book will go to Mary's Meals. And Mary's Meals, Tom, just briefly to tell you, that in countries where there is starvation because of troubles like Sudan or other places where they haven't got it right, maybe economically, and poorer families the children have to forage for food. Well, Mary's Meals was inspired by the fact of building on a school. You build onto it a little canteen and you grow maize. The fathers of the children grow the maize and it's like a porridge. And when you bring the child in, the mothers serve it in the canteen and it's got nutrients. You only need one meal. If they couldn't afford any more, that one meal off like a porridge, the maize, has got vitamins to help them grow. And when they're there, they'll meet other children, and then the teacher will teach them as well. So they'll get an education and they'll get a meal. And it's at the moment, Mary's Meals serves 2 million meals in the poorer countries to children. Isn't that amazing?
Is amazing. And with this book, because of the growing fashion of books being read to you by the wonderful authors, will you be recording your very own audiobook of the book?
Yes, yes. I've done the ebook as well because I've done a tweet on that. I said you can actually save the planet and have a giggle as well. So the ebook's up there in Amazon. Yeah, my next thing is because I want to do that. I have a thing coming up on Tuesday. A few times a year, I go to my local parish hall in Rochdale, St. Vincent's, and I do some new material. I record new material there. So I'm going to read a few chapters of the book and see how that goes, and then I'll go into a studio. I'm probably make that more the autumn, September, Tom. Because then it'll be the lead up to Christmas, and people in the mood to spend there. So that way, if people come on Amazon, they'll be able to they have the choice of a paperback, an ebook, or the audio.
So when you're on TV, do you
Yes,
sit there and watch yourself back, so rewatch the program?
it's very hard. It's very hard, and I think any performer will tell you that because you're hypercritical. It's even just when you look at a photo of yourself. Oh, I should have did my hair. I should have did that, and you can sort of kick yourself. If I do want to watch something, I put myself in the mode of how can I do better. Have a look at it and say, right, that's maybe a habit that I would change, and I would do that differently. That joke and things. If it's like a football team. Looking at the how they lost the match, I'm thinking we'll have to do that in defense or the forward. So if I can get my mind round thinking constructively, by having a look, by making sure I'll get better as a better performer, maybe slow down a bit and maybe do a thing a different way, that way. But it can be, because sometimes you can, as I say, you can go, oh no, I wish I hadn't done that. But I think you've got to tell yourself that you're really performing for the public. You want them to enjoy it. I suppose the thing about when you're working live, when you hear the laughter that you've got it right. So that's the barometer, really, isn't it?
And when you're out on the streets having a wander, skipping about, however style walking you may take, do you ever get stopped on the street and people coming up to you and asking you questions?
Yes, I do. Some days it's one of those things, Tom, because I sort of wear a hat. I have a comedy gear, a character with a tailcoat and the hat. I just put on again. So they don't recognize you right away. But I suppose the voice is instantly recognizable. And the other thing is, if I'm wearing a sun hat or something, that can gravitate people to you more. But I quite enjoy it because I like I like to converse. I'm quite a gregarious person, and I like to get people's first name of neighbors, and I don't always get them right, but I'll ask them maybe a few times especially people you meet when you're having a walk in the Dell, Nature Healy Dell Reserve. But what I do sometimes, I'll go home and write a person's name in my diary. The only thing is, if I don't see them for 12 months, you've forgotten their name. But if I see them regularly, then I can get their first name on my lips.
And do you like it that you when the fans come up to you and then retell you their favorite jokes of yours?
Yes, I love that when they tell them the jokes. Sometimes you have to clean them up, but no, I enjoy that. And even if I've heard it before, I'll still laugh because I don't want to be a smart aleck. if they've taken the trouble to tell me a joke, I'll play along, you know. And I think I'm quite a good actor at that. I don't want to make it look like it's phony. I want to make it look, and to be honest, you could have heard a joke before, but somebody can tell it a certain way and it can bring it to life, you know, Tom?
And one of the things that you've done that I'm not 100% sure how many people know about it. This is a perfect question, but how did your podcast come about based off your stage play?
It went. Yes. I mean, what had happened, just to give you the story, the stage play was written and I had a third round. I played Bury Arts Centre in Bury. And then we played the Little Theatre in Chorley, and then the pandemic hit. I wrote 4 half-hour sitcoms based on the character of how they got by in the pandemic. I mean, it's always going to be funny when two contrasting styles of people are sort of put together. It's like a famous situation comedy in BBC, like Steptoe and Son, the father and the son. They're trapped in the relationship. So I got a lot of fun out of that. Then I wrote an episode where we actually did our act in a garden for a gentleman's birthday and things. So it was based on how the double act who'd retired got back together again. So it's how they got on together doing these things, like doing garden shows or doing open air shows, different things. You have to try things. It's, you know, it's what you expect. I did them before in front of a live audience at that place, St. Vincent's, where I tried new material, and I'm glad I did it. But I suppose I'd be honest and say maybe millions didn't listen, but whoever did, I'm sure they had a... The great thing about nowadays, Tom, is like you can record things on an iPhone and it's brilliant. You get great sound. My wife did an amazing job recording those half hours. It was something new for me, so I enjoyed. And my friend Jonathan Young, who's a singer, he played the straight man. And just to let listeners know and viewers, it was called Fiffin and Faffin. The original play was called No More Fiffin and Faffin because it was a double act. The straight man was called Joe Fiffin and the comedian was called Jerry Faffin. And the actual play was based on their last night in the summer season because it hadn't been a successful season. So they were going to call it a day on the last night. Only they get this phone call from their agent, and one of them's out, the straight man's out, the comic's in the dressing room, and they're being offered a reality program. And the comic doesn't want to retire. So when he puts the phone down, he pretends that, you see, just to elaborate a bit more, the Joe Fiffin had definitely determined to retire because he got a job in a hotel as an entertainment manager. But Jerry, the comedian, still wanted to keep the act going. So when the lady from the hotel came on, he said, no, Joe can't do it. We're carrying on with the act because he wanted to do this reality show. And that's how it all panned out in the dressing room. And in between, they went out to do, their sketches. So it was a mixture of drama and variety with the sketches.
Yeah. And do you reckon that the podcast will turn into a TV sitcom?
Not sure, to be honest. I'm not sure. I don't think. I'm going to be perfectly honest. It probably wasn't a success. We didn't get enough listeners for it to move on, and I understand that. You don't always hit the bullseye, Tom. I remember reading a book about a guy called Michael Eisner. And he was in the head of the Walt Disney Corporation, but he used to work for one of the television networks. And he said there are so many pilots. What was the ratio? 400 or 4,000 before you can come up with a Cheers or a Seinfeld. But they go through so many pilots it's to get to those successful ones, you know.
And so over your career, have you and have you enjoyed your career so far?
Oh, it is. I've loved it. I've loved it. Well, look, I didn't achieve anything at school. I didn't get any A levels, anything. So I got to do what I loved doing, entertaining people. And although it was tough at the start, there was ups and downs. I have to thank a lot of for getting inspirational books, positive thinking books. They help me keep on the right track. I recommend them for any young people when things going's tough. Not only show business, no matter what way, what job they're doing, to help them be a success. There are great books, and I've mentioned them in my book. At the very end, there's a bibliography, and they'll see some of the books that I read, and if they get them, I'm sure they'll get the same inspiration that I got.
Yeah. And do you often get like phone calls from new comedians asking for the advice from you?
Yes, you do get the odd one from time to time. Yeah, yeah, and that's exactly what I tell them. I tell them get their own start, but perseverance is the big thing. Ken Dodd told me once. He said enthusiasm was the big thing because people can give up, especially in the early part of their career. But enthusiasm drives you forward, you know?
And so, coming towards the end of the interview, you appeared on a program that might have slightly got confused now because it was a program that not so long ago, I think 2018-15 time, on the BBC, but you were on the ITV version. What was it like appearing on the pilot episode of The Joke Machine?
All right. No, you can back now. You can back to trying to think. That would be late 80s or early 90s. This particular show was recorded up in Border Television, and the Crankies had done it. They'd done a series. Stu Francis had done. Oh no, Stu did. I think he was a guest. The Crankies. No, I tell a lie. Stu did a couple of series. Crankies. Another guy called Andrew O'Connor. I only did one series now. Yeah, no, I liked it because it was with the children. They were telling you jokes. There was a lot of what's called vox pops. That's Latin for going out among the people. So I went round schools and they told their favorite joke. Yes, that was interesting. And there was special guests on, which was good. I liked that. I had at the time there was famous sports people called John Conte, the boxer, and Jeff Kipps, who I think he threw the hammer or the javelin. Yeah, that was good fun. Good fun.
Well, the reason why I mentioned the reason why I called it the original is because, fun fact, in I think 2015, the BBC created a version of the show where this alien bloke was abducting a school of children, and they had to tell him the best joke, and the best joke would it'd say like that one school told the best joke, and he would let them go and keep hostage the other school.
Right. That's an interesting precept, yeah. Concept, yeah. That makes it different, yeah. Robin Williams, where he did Mork and Mindy. Do you remember that? He played the spaceman, yeah.
Yeah, and he looked like he had the hair of Elvis. It was trying to be Elvis.
Oh, right. Oh, right. Yeah, no, well, I mean, it's originality, isn't it? We're all looking for that, original idea.
And when you were doing this, do you reckon the kids told as good of jokes that you tell?
Oh, they were good. Oh, yeah. Yeah, they were smashing. There was some could go on to do things. It's a good way of getting experience. I remember one particular time on that we booked a chimp. And I had a cup of tea with them, and of course they're naturally funny, aren't they? Yeah, I think it's good because in school, to tell each other jokes, it means, if you, it keeps the bully at bay, doesn't it? It's the bigger guy and if you in the playground. But if you say, have you heard the one about the, and making them laugh means they keep their paws to themselves, don't they?
And so now we come towards the end of the interview, and this is your time to promote anything, anything you want to promote other than the book.
Other than the book, well, the book is the big thing at the moment. But if anybody's passing in Blackpool, the Lindeen Hotel is right on the front, and I will be there the first Wednesday of every month, starting in July. And the Lancashire Evening Post is that my next article will be out in a few weeks' time, and that's about Roy Hudd, a great comedian called Roy Hudd. Otherwise, keep an eye come on my website, www.jimmycricket.co.uk, or just Google Jimmy Cricket, and you'll go straight on the website, and you'll be able to see sketches from my series called And There's More, from my catchphrase in the 80s, and they'll be able to hear from the radio series I did that was written by the great comedy scriptwriter Eddie Brabham, who wrote for Markman Wise and Ken Dodd, and that's called Jimmy's Cricket Team. That's there. Come on, my email's there, and just get in touch.
Well, there you have it. What a wonderful interview. He is one of the greatest comedians to date. You can fight me on that, but we won't win because I'll end up making you laugh and you'll die. So, so the next time you'll see me in an interview format will be probably not Sunday. Well, maybe Sunday, maybe Monday. Depends on the speedy of me fingers on the editing front, but something special. So stay tuned to what's it called? I can't remember the channel now. Taskmaster World, because then you'll get some interesting tidbit, and you stay tuned for the week of the 12th of June. Yes, you'll have a week-long process of interesting interviews that are from my documentary I made called John Comer, the man who was Doctor Who. I made it clear that there was a comma because then there is a comma, as commas aren't used that often. And anyway, guys, thank you guys for watching. And remember, no, I've forgotten.